You're listening to the Team Stripes podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to episode 99 of the Team Stripes podcast, proudly presented by Acme Whistles, helping you make the big call since 1870. The legendary Acme Thunderer is now available in matte black. Acme Whistles, proudly associated with the NHL since 1917. Well, Ross, we're back. We took I would say a long leave of absence, but we're back finally. Episode 99 right here. How are you?
Dude, I'm good. Slowly getting into hockey mode in my brain, if that makes sense for everybody. It is currently seminar season, so we are pounding through those in my local area. We did a level 1 and 2 last weekend. Next weekend we have a 3 and a 1 and 2. I just went to the Advanced Officiating Symposium, which was awesome to say the least. We'll get into that here in a minute. Other than that, just living the dream. Graduate from school in December, so I'm excited about that, and just ready for a full hockey season moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think the NHL starting back up in less than 2 months. I feel like
we have I think CHN posted 55 days.
It honestly feels like the season just ended too. That's the crazy part about it.
It did.
Yeah.
We're only going to have a 90-day off season. It's nuts.
Oh, I mean, it's just wild to think about. And then, I mean, like, I like kind of like you said, we're sitting here ramping up. We're in seminar season for USA Hockey. I mean, I think Dallas has already had 2 seminars, whether they're level 1s and then level 2s or 3s. We're still waiting for our level 4 to come out. So we're a lot of us are, I mean, I know personally, I'm sitting here and I'm just like, I haven't even started anything.
Yep.
Because
I'm complete. So my card's already on my way.
So I'm generally like that. Like I generally like sign up like first day you can, but like we just haven't had any seminar info come out. So I'm like, it can wait. It can wait. And now we're obviously starting to start some scrimmages, especially down here. And I got assigned to one. And so I texted the schedule. I said, hey, is it by chance we're going to use the new rule book, right? And he's like, oh yeah. And I was like, oh, I should probably learn that.
Well,
I was like,
there are a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And actually, if you want, that's kind of a perfect segue to what I want to do. Before we get into the interview that we have lined up today, I have the USA Hockey rule change video queued up.
Oh.
So why don't we go ahead and watch that? We can watch it together and kind of discuss the rule changes.
Considering I've never seen it, I would love to watch it.
Oh my goodness. So this is going to be great. All right. So for those of you on the audio version, you get to listen to the audio version of the rule changes video, and strongly encourage you guys to pull up the YouTube link for the podcast so we can you guys can watch along with us. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and watch the rule change video here, and let's go ahead and get started.
Welcome to USA Hockey's major rule changes of the 2021-2025 rulebook. The points of emphasis that we will touch in this video include fair play and respect, abuse of officials, intimidation tactics, competitive contact, body checking, focus on possession of the puck, players, respect and development of skills, coaches, safe and sportsmanlike environment, officials, enforce all rules with integrity, and lastly, spectators, respect and support for all participants. Let's start with the Declaration of Player Safety, Fair Play, and Respect. Many principles from the Declaration of Player Safety have been incorporated into the rules. Body contact is now known as competitive contact. Glossary definitions have been added for angling, collision, late body check, physical engagement, and vulnerable or defenseless.
Oof.
Let's go over the language added to Rule 601, B.5. Banging the boards with a stick or other object, including skates or arms, after a body check regardless as to whether the check is being penalized. This is deemed to be unsportsmanlike conduct and should be penalized when done as a means of escalating dangerous and or unnecessary physical play where there is no intent to legally gain possession of the puck.
I'll go ahead and pause right there real quick. So the last rule book that we had, it was a warning to the bench first, remember? So now it's no longer a warning. They do it, we call a penalty. Make sense?
I mean, unfortunately, yes.
So
Then again, I think I called it once in the last 4
Yeah.
years.
it's just going to end up being a game management tool.
100%.
I don't see it being called all the time. Again, it's just a game management tool, and obviously we want the rules enforced as written, but yeah.
Specific language from the Declaration of Player Safety has been added to the following rules: boarding, body checking, charging, checking from behind, head contact, and roughing. Specific situations added to Rule 640, unnecessary roughness. Roughing. A player who has released a shot or pass is no longer considered to be in control of the puck. They are considered to be vulnerable or defenseless and are no longer eligible to be body checked. A minor penalty shall be assessed to any player who delivers a body check with no effort to gain possession of the puck, and the blade of the player's stick is above the knees. A minor penalty shall be assessed to any player who delivers a body check to an opponent who is physically engaged for possession of the puck with one or more other players.
All right. So the discussion at the symposium was, so this is going to be by far the hardest thing that we have to deal with as officials. The finishing your check, no more. The second that puck's gone, that player shouldn't get hit. That's pretty much what they stressed. Body checks, the stick needs to be on the ice, below your knee. Essentially, like if you're the guy giving the check, your stick's got to be below your knee, and you have to be making an attempt at playing the puck. You're not just coming in for a body check to blow the guy up. And then, so that situation in the corner. So if you have two guys engaged on the puck and a third guy comes in and hits one of the players that, or, the opposing player that is engaged on the puck, that's going to be a penalty for roughing.
So especially for that one where it's the play where buddies, two guys are engaged in the corner.
Yeah, so we got,
and a guy goes to run.
You can see my mouse, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we have this player here, blue, and 5 here, white. So this blue player came along the boards and jumped in to make it, 2-on-1, essentially, in that puck battle. And they don't want that. Now, if all 3 of them are there at the same time to play the puck, that's fine. So then let's say if this white player were to then come in, then we have a problem. But if there are 2 players actively engaged, or 3 players or 4 players, however many players actively engaged in the play, and then an additional player comes in and takes a guy out, that's where the penalty's coming in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I know, especially down here in Dallas, we've been calling that for years now. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's one of those things where if you want to run a pile, it's not a hockey play. You're running a pile.
Yeah.
Whether there's 2 guys, 6 guys, 19 guys in this pile, if you're running it, you're running it because a guy's generally in a vulnerable position. And then what happens once you run the pile, then somebody else, has to go stick up for their teammate. Next thing you know, we have 2 kids fighting. I'm okay with that. I love that, it's now officially in the rule book.
Yeah.
I'm also okay with, if you don't have the puck, you can't get hit. The only issue I see with that is, especially at the higher levels, we're going to see a kid quickly release the puck when the player has already been committed to making the check.
I think we are going to give a little bit of judgment on,
I agree there.
Like if I know if player A is coming in to hit player B and player B just gets rid of the puck for no damn reason right before he gets hit, I'm probably not calling it.
I agree. If the hit's already if the kid's committed into the hit and everybody knows there's going to be a hit, and Buddy just throws away the puck because he goes, oh shit, I don't want to get hit.
Yeah.
And you get hit. I'm not putting my arm up for that. Like,
Yeah.
we're not telling kids like, hey, you can't make that decision in 0.2 seconds to somehow not hit him.
Yeah.
And then the only issue I have with the stick above the knee is I love the rule because especially down in the South, kids hit with their hands up all the time. I don't know why. I always joke that it's because that's how they get taught in football.
Yep.
But the only issue is now there's going to be a big hit where the kid's stick was down, and due to the contact, like it does like to pop up.
Well, so here's the thing. They definitely made sure to tell us that we need to judge the hit on initial point of contact. So like if the stick starts low and he's trying stick on puck, if his stick comes up, not like driving through, but like if his stick just comes up, it's not going to be that big of a deal.
Yeah, like
but
if
now
it rides up the other guy's stick.
Yeah. Now if we're driving through, and like getting into like a high stick situation or whatever, that's going to be different.
I just see it as a bunch of coaches are going to see, oh, the stick can't be above the knee, and then it's going to come above the knee, and they're going to, that they're going to raise hell and hell because they
I know it's going to be a learning curve for everybody.
For everybody, 100%.
Let's go ahead and continue here.
In all cases, the onus is on the player delivering the check to
so that there was
vulnerable or
that there was the late hit they're looking for.
Guy releases the puck, 2 seconds go by, and then we make a hit.
Yeah, exactly.
In danger of potential injury. Let's move on to general concepts. All major penalties will now carry an automatic game misconduct penalty. Any reference to injury as it relates to penalty assessment has been replaced with reckless endangerment, defined as engaging in conduct with regard to the consequences which create a substantial risk of serious physical injury to an opponent. All major.
Have you ever seen that clip before?
I have, but every time I see it, I'm just like, what the hell?
What the hell? Because you got like a major game high stick there and then a match penalty.
Yeah, like that's just.
And match penalties to be judged on severity of the action and not whether injury results.
All right, so this was my camera decided not to keep working, so I will get that fixed real quick. Okay, camera's back. So on this one here, I really like this because all too often most of our referees are making a determination on whether or not it's a major penalty on the result of the action and not the action itself. So now we are strictly looking at the action to determine whether or not it's a match or a major or a match potentially. So if a hit's reckless, if you're like, oh shit, doesn't matter if the kid pops right up or not. If you deem that it's worthy of a major, you're calling it. There's no more, oh, he wasn't injured, so I can't call a major.
Which I absolutely love because, I mean, I feel like everybody puts so much emphasis on, is this kid hurt? And we don't know because we're not doctors.
We kind of joked. It was like, okay, so you went from having us be doctors, now we're lawyers.
Yep. And I mean, for me, like, to go over to a coach and say, like, yes, the kid is fine. The kid that got hit is okay, and that's good that he's okay. But I'm still going with a major in a game for the simple fact that wasn't a hockey play.
Exactly.
And that's
so now
where the reckless comes in.
Yep. And that's it. All we have to go, hey coach, he was reckless in that hit. He's out of here.
And
that hit tells me he doesn't want to play hockey today.
Yep.
And that's it.
It's tough to argue.
Yeah, it really is. And I love it.
Yeah. You're going to run into the coach when you say, look, to me, that's not a hockey play. Well, he's going to go, oh, blah, blah, blah. It's a good hockey play. And it's like, well, not anymore. Not in my game. It might be in Johnny's game next, but in my game, that's not. The one thing I don't like about this is the major penalties now carrying a game misconduct. And we talked a little bit about it with Ken.
Yeah.
I have no issue with it because the majority of the time, if you're calling a major, you're calling a game misconduct as well. Like, very, very rarely have I gone standalone 5.
Mhm.
But me personally, I like having a lot of options penalty
Well,
wise. I
yeah.
like having the widest variety of penalty options,
Well,
sequences, combinations
just
I can.
keep in mind, and I think the biggest thing that's lost in this, and yes, I want the options too, but these penalty options are there for your officials that might not necessarily have the knowledge of the rule book, or they're up and coming. So like there's that. And then USA Hockey's Youth Council basically decided, hey, if you commit a major penalty, you don't deserve to play in the game.
And
And you know
I'm
what?
A-okay with it.
And that's fine. And obviously some of us used to use standalone majors as a game management tool. Like, you get to stay in the game, but you're going to sit for 5. Like, shitty play, hockey play gone bad, no big deal, sit for 5. But now it's just easy. Bye, see ya. So
Yeah, it definitely streamlines the process, which look, at the end of the day, USA Hockey's dealing with it was something like over 100,000 officials, if I remember correctly.
No, only 26,000. And actually it was down last year. We
Okay.
were only at about 20,000 officials last season.
But still, I mean, there's 20,000 different opinions on this.
Yep.
Now, USA Hockey's just going, if you're calling a major, you're calling a game, because that way, if like you said, some new kid it's his second game, something happens, cool. He knows it's going to be a major plus a game misconduct. Whereas, yeah, somebody like me or you who have been doing it for a while, been around for a while, yeah, I kind of like the option of every once in a while being able to call a 5, but keep the kid in the game.
Yeah. So, all right, let's move on.
There are 3 levels of involvement with the puck that have been established. First, contact with the puck. The last skater or goalkeeper to have touched the puck, a puck touch, this includes a puck that is deflected off a player or any part of their equipment. The second level of involvement with the puck is possession of the puck. This is placing your stick on the puck in an effort to establish control or to deliberately direct the puck with any part of the body. The last player to have intentionally played the puck is considered to have possession of the puck. A player may be in possession of the puck without establishing control of the puck. However, a player must first gain possession of the puck prior to be considered in control of the puck. The third level of involvement with the puck is control of the puck. This is defined as the skater or goalkeeper that, in the opinion of the official, has possession of the puck and is guiding the puck in any desired direction. Contact with the puck is not considered control of the puck. A player in possession of the puck may also immediately establish control of the puck. A skater is considered to be in control of the puck, is eligible to be body checked and or engage in competitive contact.
Okay.
That's really wordy for such a easy thing.
Is wordy as hell.
Yeah. For something that
I love the attempt. I love what they're going for here. We are defining the 3 stages of the puck, being, possession, control, a touch. I love it. It's just a little too wordy. So, but that first clip they showed, that's going to be a penalty now every single time. The second clip, whatever. We'll just keep moving forward.
I'm A-okay with that. Like, yeah, it's wordy, but I'm A-okay with this. Yeah. The fact of like,
I just love the spirit and intent of what they were trying to put out there.
It's gonna stop the big hit, the suicide pass breakout where the forward has to look through his feet because his D-man wants him to get
no more. Yeah, the buddy pass.
You can't do it anymore, and that's beautiful.
All right, so
another major rule change is that we have reduced the penalties per player in the same game to 4 penalties per player for the game misconduct to be assessed. Also, the team 15 penalties has been reduced to 12 for that coach to receive a 1-game suspension. And finally, there has been incorporated a standardized discipline policy for match penalties that establishes guidelines for suspensions and for a player or coach to accept a suspension without a hearing.
Okay, so the first one is huge. And we are going to see a lot of game misconducts here. We have our Labor Day tournament coming up, and our 14s, 16s, and 18s. This 4 penalty rule is going to come into play a lot. I 100%. Guarantee it. Same thing with the 12 penalties for coaches. This is something that we're going to need to be mindful of. I'm not saying count penalties, but count penalties. Don't necessarily stop calling them if you're getting close to the 12 on either side, but just be mindful that, like, let's say, I think my biggest piece of advice here would be, you just called your 10th penalty on team A. Okay. It's 10th minor. Something I would relay to either the captain of the team or the coach would be, hey, coach, hey, buddy, to the captain, you guys have 10 penalties. Just keep in mind that if you get 2 more, your coach is suspended for the next game. It's just going to be a communication thing.
So with the player one being reduced to 4, I would definitely talk about that to a coach for if the kid's at 3.
Oh, 100%. Like,
and just be like,
if,
hey, but the one for the coach, if I'm calling 10 minor penalties on your team or 10 penalties in general, 2 things are probably going to happen. You're yelling at me, so we're not talking.
Yeah.
And you probably have 0 control over your bench right now.
Yeah.
At that point, I have zero. If we get to those 12 penalties now, which I
couldn't tell you the last time. I couldn't tell you the last time I hit 15 on one team. So
mine
it's
was
just
maybe
one of those,
like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah. So it's just gonna be one of those things that we need to be mindful of on our end. The 4 penalty definitely with the players. Like, again, if you're in a situation where you got 3 on a player, you say, hey, coach, this kid's got 3. I'm not going to tell you how to coach your team, but if you want him to play your next game, tell him to stop acting like an idiot or just sit him on the bench.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the match penalty ones where, they can now accept suspensions. I mean, that's
honestly,
thing.
This is long overdue.
Correct.
I feel like it's just one of those things where it should have been done years ago, where we had a streamlined process for matches instead of everything needing a hearing or 30 days. So I'm okay with that.
100%.
Let's keep going here.
The exception that had allowed shorthanded teams to ice the puck at the 15 only, 16 and under, and 18 under age classifications has been eliminated. The new rule calls for icing to be called in every instance except at high school, junior, and the adult classification. Also, immediate offside will be called at all levels of youth hockey.
Really nothing to get into here. We all loathe, love, or hate this change. We really didn't get into it at the symposium. The youth council voted, and that's what it was. And I will say that the reason for the exemption for high school, on this was actually only passed by 2 votes. It was like split right down the middle. I think it was 51-49, that kind of a vote. And the main reason for it was because there's crossover between USA Hockey High School and NFHS High School. And they don't want, when there is that crossover, to try to figure out whose rules they're going to play with.
Yeah. Now, I know Ken talked about that a little bit in the interview.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where, like, the body checking change and all that stuff still applies. It's just the icing and the offside. I really think that's it. Let me go a little bit forward.
Only levels using delayed or tag up offsides are high school, junior, and the adult classifications. Major rule changes.
All right. We can stop there. And anyone that wants to go and watch the rest of the video, I did post it on my personal YouTube account. It's just 2021-2025 USA Hockey Rule Changes video.
Yeah, and we can post
this
that
just
too.
We can post the link to it. It's just one of those things. Now we're getting into the minute stuff. So, but those were the key points. Honestly, the body checking one is going to be the hardest thing that we have to deal with. We have to retrain ourselves, and then we have to retrain the players. It wouldn't be a Team Stripes podcast without an appearance of Shadow.
Hi, always Shadow. The best. But no, I mean, Shadow. We go through this, I feel like, every 4 years, and we talk to Ken about this a lot. Every 4 years, something comes out that
Mhm.
a big group of people aren't happy with. And it's one of those things where 95% of the time it's a non-issue. I mean, I remember when the banging on the boards first came out. I think the first weekend that we used the new rules, which would have been Labor Day weekend, the first year it came out, called it once. Since then, I have maybe called it one or two more times
Archer decided to join too,
because
not
it's
to be left out.
it's one of those things where it's a no issue, and I think a lot of these rules, like, yeah, there's going to be a learning curve, especially with the 16s and 18s not being able to ice the puck and the delayed offsides being taken away. But at the same time, as a linesman, I kind of halfway appreciate it just for the simple fact of there's no more head
Well, yeah,
high
there's no more.
rifles coming at me.
Yeah. Yep.
If
And-
you need somewhere to be bright about, there it is.
Yep. And two, like, this is the biggest rule change since we went to the new standard of enforcement, which I don't think you were reffing then. That would have been 2006.
I think I was still in Australia back then, man. Jeez.
That's funny. So that was the big painful rule change 15 years ago. It worked out for us because we were like, yay, we get to call penalties now. And obviously that has since backed off. But now, like, this is just going to be the big thing to retrain ourselves. So I think with going through the rules video, I think now it's a perfect time to transition over to our interview. You want to introduce our guest there, Brendan?
Yeah, but before I do that, we have to give a shout out to another sponsor of ours, Sig Hockey. Are you in the market for new hockey equipment? I know the season is right around the corner. SigHockey.com is your newest source for pro stock NHL and NCAA hockey gear. Sig Hockey is offering Team Stripes listeners 10% off their first purchase with a code STRIPES10. That's STRIPES10 for 10% off your order at Sig Hockey. That's Sig, SIG hockey.com. And yeah, we have somebody who's mentored me since I think I moved to Dallas at 14. He's been mentoring me ever since. He is the Rocky Mountain District Referee in Chief. That's one of the, I think, like 19 hats that he wears for USA Hockey. He's a big part of the rule changes. He's part of the committees. He's part of the guys that write the tests every year. And that is Ken Reinhard. So without further ado, let's send it over to him. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. He is the Rocky Mountain District Referee in Chief. He wears many, many, many hats in the USA Hockey, probably more than I think even me and Ross know of. Please welcome to the show, Ken Reinhard. Ken, how are you today?
Great, Brendan. How are you?
I am
Hello,
fantastic.
Ross.
Ken, I'm good. As we were just talking about before we started recording, I am actually getting ready to head to Providence, Rhode Island to go to the Officiating Symposium so I can get my tenured level 4. So I'm good.
Good deal. You'll enjoy it. It was a major step for the officiating section to put that program together. It's evolving. We certainly did a good job on the first one in Minneapolis a couple of years ago, but this one should be better from what we learned in Minneapolis, and the next one will be better than that. So
Yep.
Everything takes a little bit of time and a little bit of massaging. Nothing's perfect out of the gate, that's for sure.
Yep, and it's definitely a program that was very welcomed across the board by guys that have been doing this for a long time. Obviously, this will be my 19th or 20th season of officiating, so like going to the seminar every year, it's just kind of like, why do I have to still do this? So having the option to go and become a tenured official, to where once you do go to the symposium that we do and not having to do the yearly seminar is huge, because it's just, one less thing that we got to deal with as far as being tenured officials. Obviously we have to stay up on the rules and do our tests and our modules, but it's just one less thing that we don't necessarily have to give up our time for. But overall, it's just been a great idea. I'm very much looking forward to going this year. I was supposed to go last year, but obviously that didn't happen.
True. And this year's class was restricted in attendance by the state. So I think there's only going to be about 200 of you
Yes.
this year. Where in Minneapolis we had 255 or thereabouts in the kickoff year, and we were really looking forward to Providence before COVID hit being closer to 300, 325, because the reviews were really good, and we expected a better turnout for Providence, especially with the density of officials in the Northeast corridor from Philadelphia all the way up through Maine. So
makes sense. Now, were you, as a RIC of a district, were you involved in any of the discussion early on with them bringing that program about?
Not only was I involved with it, I was part of the subcommittee that helped develop it. So Leo Boylan, who was the district referee and chief of the Atlantic District, myself, Russ Eidenberger from Michigan, Dave Labuda, of course, Matt, BJ, and I'm probably leaving somebody out. All were part of that subcommittee, putting together program ideas, thoughts, requirements, who we wanted to attract. Quite honestly, we really weren't looking to attract the guy who was 55 years old or so and was probably going to officiate for 5 more years. We were looking for the guy who was 24, 25, 26, had 10 years in, and had a long career in front of him, and we're trying to relieve some of his or her pressure. Mm-hmm. So either way, it worked out well.
Oh, definitely, it has. And we had a few people from Florida go to the first one, and I heard just great reviews and all that. And I really wanted to go, but I didn't have the money or the time back then to do that first one. So you talked about you're part of the process. Like, so what was that like? What was it? What were some of the initial ideas, or where it got to where it is now, as far as, hey, this is what we should do for our officials, and offering them a chance to come to this event, sit through basically a 3-day long seminar, and then now we're going to send them off into the world as our tenured guys that don't have to go to seminars anymore.
Well, I think, Ross, you got to understand what goes on at the annual Congress and at the winter meetings and mm-hmm. the sidebar conversations the RIC section has monthly to fully grasp how things like this get developed. We just don't sit around in a room in Florida or Colorado Springs for 2 or 3 hours and we, carve out this idea and bingo, here it is. We knew from a number of years of results and statistics that we had to change something about officiating because our retention, we don't have a problem recruiting officials. That's clearly not an issue. We recruit somewhere around 8,000 brand new level ones a year. Problem is we don't hold on to them. And the average retention time frame is about a year, season and a half. I did an extensive study in the Rocky Mountain District, and we pulled 600 officials, and we got 200 responses or thereabouts. And there were 3 key reasons for officials walking away from the program. One was abuse, and we're addressing that. I was part of another subcommittee that dealt with abuse, and there's some rule changes this year that specifically deal with officials abuse and give the officials on ice a little more authority to get rid of the bad actors quickly. The second part was the registration hurdles. And the third was game assignments. So game assignments is a longer term process, but when we talked about retention of officials, we talked about 2 things. One, officials who have left the game, who had extensive resumes in officiating, who wanted to come back, but didn't necessarily want to go through all the rigmarole of getting registered. And those officials who had stuck with us for a long time, 7, 8, 9 years, whatever it is. And the seminar process had become a significant burden. So we attacked those two ideas, and the one that came out first is the tenured program. And it started with basically no idea is a bad idea. How much stuff can you throw against the wall and see what sticks? And what do we have to do to ensure some level of education, particularly in the rule change years we're experiencing this year? And how do we acknowledge the fact that a guy like you or Brendan, or if I was still dragging my fanny up and down the ice surface, how do we acknowledge all those years of experience and not try to teach you how to call offsides or icing or establish a penalty standard or conduct a face-off again? I mean, how do we get around that? I mean, certainly those are things that if you don't know after 7 or 8, 9 years of officiating, we've got bigger problems in our educational program. So we looked at certain things. We talked about what kind of knowledge we can impart upon you. If you weren't at the symposium in Minneapolis, but hearing from Kevin Collins and Chris Rooney and Brian Murphy and officials who have reached the highest pinnacle of our game, officials who are in the middle, international officials, teachers, motivational speakers. It really changed the concept of what you're doing and the education that we provided. And I thought we did a pretty good job in Minneapolis, and I expect this one to be better. We've got to get away from, and it's pretty well acknowledged within the within the referee section, we got to get back to being an education organization, not a testing organization.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely couldn't agree with you more on that statement, because it's felt like over the years that it's just been, hey, here's your rule book, here's your test, go off and figure it out. Now, obviously, the local associations have a lot more to do with that feeling than USA Hockey as a whole. But we also, for me, I think, as I've seen in the the time I've been doing this, the evolution of at least the testing goes, like even like the way the tests are worded now compared to the way they used to, they like the last few years, it's been kind of hard in like reading the questions. It has gotten better, but like there was a point where it's just like, what are they trying to do here?
Well,
does that make sense?
Sure. Let me address that for you. So the test questions are in a question bank.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're not rewriting questions every year. And all the questions come from the rule book or the case book. There is a test writing committee, which consists of rotating referee and chiefs. One of the things we did a couple of years ago was we made the test level specific. It's the open book test went from 100 questions down to 50 questions.
Yep.
Okay.
Which we greatly appreciate, by the way.
Okay. So you're welcome. So as the section director, I kind of unofficially chair that committee. I don't necessarily get involved in the writing of the questions, but so we reduced that to make them level specific. So we're testing level 1s on level 1 knowledge, level 2s on 2 knowledge. And obviously, as you go up the ladder, the questions get a little more complex and a little more difficult.
Yes.
Do we have issues with grammar and punctuation from time to time? Sure. It's not a perfect world. And if we've got a problem with a question and a serious problem with a question, we're happy to look at it, address it, make the adjustments necessary, both on scoring and rewriting that question for the next go around. But all the questions kind of reside in a question bank. Mm-hmm. And for the open book test, another change we made was that if you failed the open book test, which God, I hope nobody does, the book should be right in front of you, but you get those outliers, right?
I'm the guy that usually misses it by one question, because
you missed it by more than one because you got all those other ones wrong. But regardless, you don't have to go back and take the entire test again. You only have to retake the questions you got incorrect.
We
That was
also
another significant change we made.
greatly appreciated that one
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, we're just trying to help out here, right? We don't want to be a testing organization. We want to be an education organization.
Yes.
On the closed book exams, this year's level 3 and 4 will be virtual again, which you'll have an hour and a half time frame. So again, yes, they're closed book, but we know that somebody's going to reach behind them on the credenza and grab the book and look up a question they don't answer. We want you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you don't have enough time to do all 50 questions in a closed book exam with the book in front of you, but certainly on those questions you're struggling with, grab the book. And learn from that. If you're a doctor and you're doing brain surgery and you're in the operating theater, we don't expect you to be guessing. So
Yep.
if we've got an opportunity to impart a little more education to you while you're taking that semi-closed book exam, great. We think that's a good thing.
Well, because I was
the
just going to say,
questions-
because ultimately the goal of the open book and the closed book test is to learn the rules and know how to use
That's
the
right.
rules.
That's right. Yeah, you'll get enough challenge on the ice by coaches and parents and players to test your mettle on knowledge of the rules. We don't need to be doing that too. But I will tell you, there are some questions that sometimes make me go say, what? And Matt and I will go back and forth on them and we'll kind of sort them out.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part of the process. It's not a perfect world.
I haven't taken either test yet because we were told by the people with a Symposium email like, hey, don't do anything yet.
Right.
But I did see one question, and it was one of those that I had to read a few times because basically it was the situation where it was like an end zone it was an end zone face off and a player got a misconduct. And I'm reading it. I'm like, okay, well, it just says misconduct. Is it a 2? Is it 10? But generally, when USA Hockey says a player was given a misconduct, they're meaning the 10.
That's
so
correct.
that is what we came up with the solution of the answer, even though I really wish it was worded as a player was given a 10-minute misconduct or a 2-minute.
Well, if you go back to the terminology in the rule book, the minor penalties on sportsmanlike conduct,
yeah,
the misconduct is 10 minutes and the game misconduct is go take an early shower.
Yeah.
And
it was just one of those things. Like I was talking to my buddy that was asking me, I was like, well, I'm going to tell you right now, just the way this is worded, they mean a 10.
That's right. That's right. Don't read. Biggest mistake everybody does, they read into the question.
Too much into it. Yeah, exactly.
Do not read into the question. Look, the guys that are writing it, we're not that smart. We're just putting them down on paper.
And he was like, are you sure? I was like, trust me, I've been taking these tests for 20 years. They mean a 10.
Yep, exactly. Yep, exactly. Don't read into them. And quite honestly, if you go to the case book or the rule book, you'll find it sitting right there. I mean, they virtually come directly out of it.
Well, since we've covered the testing side of it, I guess really the biggest thing and the most controversial thing that's right here and now in our current mind frame as USA Hockey officials is this rule change that just came out. Now, I want to preface this for all of our listeners and everybody to say we have to remember something as officials. And as mad as I am about some of these rule changes, at the end of the day, the rule changes are not for us. They're for the kids, and they're to make the game better for the kids or the adults in the cases with the rule changes for the adults. Now, obviously, we as referees, like me in particular, I have very strong feelings for these rule changes because of my personal opinion and where I've officiated and all that. So my opinion on these rule changes is just strictly coming out of personal, like, why would you do that to us as referees? But then I also have to remember, hey, this is about the kids. So I guess we should just kind of dive into some of them. What for you, like, I know, Ken, you said you were part of the rule change committee, correct?
I'm part of the playing rules committee and also sit on the youth council.
Okay.
So,
So-
I'm, you know,
What were some of the big ones, like right off the rip, that like in that room we're like, okay, here's a rule change that were presented, and here's the impact it could make, so we ended up changing it. Like, let's maybe like I guess the golden goose that was being chased for a long time, of not being able to ice the puck while shorthanded.
okay. So, that, all right, so to understand how rule changes come about, USA Hockey, and it's kind of the same discussion I have with some people about rule changes in the NHL.
Mhm.
The Playing Rules Committee doesn't line up rule changes. All the rule changes are submitted by any one of 600,000 USA Hockey members. Every rule change that's submitted, it goes to the Playing Rules Committee. And Matt Leaf, God bless him, pulls all these things together into one big book. And we had,
And sorry to
Probably
interrupt,
three.
on any given rule change, how many generally get submitted?
this year, we had 243 rule changes submitted,
Okay.
or 300 pages of literature
Okay.
to read through. Some of them, Ross and Brennan, candidly, are
Oh,
just so often.
I read some of the rejected ones and I had a good laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so you know that some of them don't even make it out of committee.
Yes.
Others are all they get from the Playing Rules Committee is a recommendation.
Mhm.
Okay, recommended to defeat, recommended to approve, recommended refer to the youth council, refer to the adult council, refer to girls women's section, whatever it is.
Okay.
We're not making the ultimate decision on that rule. Okay.
Makes sense. So if you guys say recommend approve, they don't necessarily approve it. And if you say
No.
recommend disapprove, they don't necessarily disapprove.
They don't necessarily defeat it either.
Yeah.
So after that whole process goes through, then the rule changes are culled down to, let's say it was recommended to youth council,
Mhm.
and the youth council says, hey, we like this. In the packet it goes. Youth council says they don't like it. They agree with the defeat. Doesn't mean anything. It still gets presented because the board of directors is made up, I think the number is 108 people, including the executive council.
Okay.
And all 108 or whatever the number is vote on the rule changes. So they all represent you. If you're for like Brendan in the Rocky Mountain District, in Taha, your Taha representatives have a vote, and your district directors have a vote, and I have a vote, and the executive council people have a vote, and the rule change either passes or it doesn't pass. As in the case of icing on limiting icing on the power play, you remember that rule initiated at 14U and below.
Mhm.
In the test, right? And it was very successful. And before it became a rule change at 14U and below, it was tested in Massachusetts.
Mhm. Yep.
And they found that the players adapted very quickly. What the playing side, the youth council came back with, who were the biggest endorsers of this, because it did not carry through on the adult side, and it did not carry through for high school. And I'll explain high school in a minute. What the youth side said was, we want players to make a play. We don't want them blindly dumping the puck out any longer. This was not coming from the referees or the coaches. This was coming from youth council. Coaching section endorsed it.
Now, when you say youth council, like who makes that up? Is that made up by like parents? Is it made up by
No,
coaches?
it's made up of other members of USA Hockey. Keith Barrett is the vice president, chairman of the youth council. He's from Vermont. He is also a referee. He's
are they like people from different local, like my affiliate is Sayhoff. So is there like a Sayhoff person and a whatever, like all the
Sure.
affiliates?
Yeah, I mean,
Is that what it? Okay.
I think the youth council is like 60 people.
Okay.
50, 60 people. I mean, so it's not 3 guys in a room shooting dice, trying to
Yeah.
figure out what's going on, right? Same thing on the playing rules committee. It's a wide group of people from various districts and affiliates. Same thing on girls, women's section. Same thing. All your coaches section are coaches in chief, just like the referees in chief. So there's a lot of people involved in these things. So it's not just 2 or 3 guys sitting around a room, me, Dave Labuda, Matt Leaf, and some referees deciding what the rules are going to be. We have very little input. We may get some stuff referred to us as a section for our input, but ultimately it's the board of directors who are voting to adopt or reject rule changes.
Okay. So then obviously this icing, prohibits all youth players to ice a puck while shorthanded.
Well, they can ice it, but then you're going to face off in the other end.
Yeah. It's still ice. It doesn't get negated because they're shorthanded.
So, and some of the rationale behind that, Ross, is a team has been penalized. Why would you allow them to do something that otherwise, while at even strength, was not permissible? Why are you going to allow that now?
Well, my answer always goes back to the reason why that rule was put in place. And that rule was put in place, and I believe it was somewhere between 1920s and 1940s era of National Hockey League. Basically, the Montreal Canadiens power play was too good. And they would score every single time on the power play. So the NHL changed the rule so that teams would not get that disadvantage because the Montreal Canadiens power play was too good.
Right. So if you watch I'm sorry.
It's just one of those things, like, it's been a part of the game for so long.
Right.
It doesn't feel right. Now I've done it in Bantam U14 and below. And I have seen where, players make a smarter chip than dumping it down the ice. So I get that part of it. And I understand why changing it now is good, because the players that are moving up into the U16 category have already been basically playing it with it their whole playing career. So I get that part of it, but I felt like the rule itself, like I called it earlier, was a golden goose, and people out of the Northeast, somebody had this idea and was like, hey, this would be a good idea. And then they eventually stuck with it. Because I believe when I was playing, and I haven't played since I stopped playing in 2005. Like, there was talk of it back then. And now 17 years later, it finally went through.
I can't speak for them. And certainly, but I would bet you the NHL is watching this very carefully, as are juniors and college hockey. Because if you watch the NHL power play, when you're getting 1 or 2 or maybe 3 shots on goal in a power play opportunity, maybe. And scoring is what keeps fans in the stands. I'm not too sure that those higher level leagues, be it the American League or the NHL or college hockey or whatever, won't be looking hard at this.
Well, and that's also a thing too. Like, okay, I hate it personally, but I get it at the same time, and maybe we're going to be the test subjects for this rule, and maybe eventually it does work its way up. So
sure.
So that's very good insight on how the rule change does get made, though, like going through that entire process from it getting submitted to committees and all of that, and then finally getting voted on.
And I can tell you, there's a number of hours tied into this. The rule changes.
I can only imagine.
The rule changes were published all had to be in November, right? We had our first 4-hour meeting as a rules committee in December, followed up by another 4-hour Zoom call. And then we came out of the winter meetings with a little thinned down book, which was with the recommendations. And Then we had more meetings. We had enough meetings that my wife was tired of hearing my voice on Zoom. So,
I can imagine.
so
Now-
and then we get to annual Congress where the vote takes place. So.
Mhm. And so for those of us, or for our listeners out there that have never heard this process before, like it is a pretty big and daunting task to make these rule changes. And it was something like when I first started officiating, it was every other year.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only imagine what it was like doing this every other year compared to now doing it once every 4 years. And the amount, like the ball always had to be moving on rule changes, I would assume, when it was done every other year.
Every other year was a challenge. I was first registered as an A House official in 1973.
Oh my goodness.
So, you know, those were the days when you went to a seminar, you took your open book exam right there, and they handed you a card and press when you walked out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've kind of evolved.
Ain't that the truth?
But the rule change process has become daunting, and it is extremely detailed. The rule changes aren't made lightly. And there are a lot of rule changes in there that are going to impact the game that, you know, I read in social media about the reduced penalty times and the immediate offside. So every one of those things were scrutinized pretty heavily.
Yeah.
And
I had a thought about
Sure.
the reduced penalty time thing is just guidance. It's just, hey, here's what we recommend. It's not a, hey, you have to do this.
It's not a, hey, you got to do it, but it all revolves around, if you're playing a 12-minute period, why are we putting somebody in the penalty box for 2 minutes when in a 20-minute period, that's 10% of the period time. In a 12-minute period, it's, you know,
A sixth.
almost a sixth of the period. We want kids to play. We want the kids to play.
Yeah.
And it's not about relieving the responsibility for the infraction. It's about making the penalty time equivalent in percentage to the playing time that's available. And because if it wasn't about making players accountable for their behavior, the rule change that reduced the penalties from 5 to 4 and 15 to 12 would have never gotten through.
Yeah.
So we're clearly trying to make players accountable for their behavior and coaches accountable for the behavior of their teams.
And that's actually a perfect segue to what I was going to ask you next. As far as like from the referee side, and like enforcement of the rules and all of that, was there anything that the referees brought, like, you know, yourself and Matt, and, you know, the referee side said, hey, here's what we think should happen as far as like the rule change stuff should go, maybe whether it be enforcement or number of penalties, or like, were there any rule changes that came about specifically because the referees said, hey, I think we should do this?
Well, there are a couple introductions from the referee section, one of which was change the bench minor penalty and game misconduct to a coach to the referee now has the option after issuing that first bench minor penalty for the coach's behavior. That penalty no longer had to just be on the clock in order to assess the game misconduct, right? So now, once that bench minor has been assessed, the referee now has the option of assessing a second bench minor penalty, depending on the behavior of the coach, or assessing the game misconduct.
Oh, just go. So once, see, I haven't gotten through.
Yeah, get into the 601 stuff. It's great.
Perfect. So now it's no longer I benched you once. Your bench minor go bye-bye. 5 minutes later, I have to bench you again before I can toss you.
Right. No, you can go right. You can go right. You can go right to the game or benching. The other change we made was on the assault of an official. Right. There was not a great middle ground there. There was touching and holding and impeding an official from doing his job, which could be a misconduct or a game misconduct. and then there was a player who was trying to get at his opponent and, shoved you out of the way, or somebody threw a water bottle not at you but in your general direction.
Mhm.
So we've added penalty there so that we're not going right to the assault on a game official, causing this massive 30-day discussion and hearings and all this other stuff. And match penalties have been taken to a standard of application to reduce the amount of hearing time that these volunteers had to set aside either once a month or whenever it was. So a player could accept the general guidelines of discipline, or he or she could ask for a hearing.
Okay.
And chances are, if you ask for a hearing,
So that's
it's
just
not
kind
going
of
to work out well.
That just streamlines the process for match
Right.
penalties. Okay.
So, I mean, those were things we asked for and we wrote up. And so certainly we had input. But again, we're, like you said, when we opened this segment, this is here for the players and the coaches and the parents. We're here like police officers or anybody else. We enforce the rules of the game to the best of our ability every night, every time. Does that mean we're going to get it right 100% of the time? Nope. But
very true.
All I expect out of an official is an honest 100% effort. Brendan can tell you that. Having been under my tutelage for a long time, right, Brendan?
100%.
Be professional, know the rule book, apply it to the best of your ability each and every time. Hustle, treat disrespect with respect, and for God's sakes, have some fun out there. That's all I expect.
Ain't that the truth?
If you're not doing those 5 things, if you do those 5 things, we're not going to have a lot of conversations.
It's funny though, we just talking about the rule with the coach, and I was going to chime in before you continued on. I was like, well, that rule doesn't help me any, because in 20 years of doing this, I refuse to throw out coaches because of the way I handle my situations. I just straight up, like, I go over like, here's the deal, bud. If you think you're going to leave so you can go drink a beer before I'm drinking a beer, that's not happening. You're staying here.
Yeah, if I got to suffer through it, you're suffering through it.
Exactly. If I'm stuck out here, you're stuck out here.
Look, I mean, if you can manage the game, and I don't mean game management by avoiding calling tough penalties, but if you can manage the emotions, remember, we're firemen, not fire starters.
Yep.
And our job is to keep players and coaches in the game. And if talking somebody off the ledge works, do it.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean you have to accept abuse or personal attacks or any of that.
And something else that I was wondering about these rule changes, how does the high school side fit in? Because you said, how the icing and the offside rule doesn't apply to icing. So what is USA Hockey's mentality of putting youth here and then high school, like, just off the side?
Okay, so you talk to our friends in Minnesota, right? That's where this really stemmed from. We have 36, roughly, I think the number was 36,000 players playing high school hockey under USA Hockey. Okay. And then, of course, in the Northeast, in Minnesota, and
they're not USA Hockey there.
They're not USA, National High School Federation rules, right?
Yes.
And because in Minnesota, that's the greatest number of high school players playing both high school and USA Hockey. They wanted high school to stay with those playing Federation, playing still with icing on the PK and the offside and the delayed offside or the tag of offside. So there's a long discussion about that. So as Brendan knows, Texas, we have high school hockey under USA Hockey.
Yep. So do we do here as well.
Yeah. So for that's one thing. But Minnesota was a little different. And Minnesota and Massachusetts run split seasons, right?
Yep. Yeah, because you play your beforehand USA, then you play your high school, which is for them the more important side, and then you play the rest of your USA games to go to nationals. So
out of consideration for the vast majority of players who were playing under Federation rules, primarily in Minnesota, that exception was granted. And of course, for adult hockey, we didn't change any of it.
Well, yeah, because could you imagine? There'd been a mutiny if you did it.
Well, look, most of those C and D players can't find the blue line anyway, so it doesn't. Let's not make it. I tell officials all the time, when you work adult hockey, and if you're not working the A levels where you have some experienced players, when you in the morning when they go to work, and somebody says to them, "What'd you do last night?" They say, "Well, I played hockey." And I know for every official working those games, what they just witnessed didn't look anything like hockey. But to those players, they played hockey.
Yep.
And you have to respect their effort. So let's not make the game any more complicated for those guys than it already is. And let's move on.
Yeah. That, I totally agree with that. And honestly, one of the rules that I was most happy with for rule changes was actually one of the adult ones where you don't have to substitute a guy when he gets a major.
Yeah.
And when the major expires, the player can just jump from the bench instead of having to be in the penalty box. I was actually really happy about that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those common sense changes you make because you realize these guys are not national team bound. They're, it's late at night. Mm-hmm. And what are we doing here? I mean, are we complicating the thing by putting the team squid in the box for 5 minutes and he sits there and, or somebody's got to remember to get somebody in the box. I mean, I remember when we had that rule at the youth level and you didn't have to put somebody in the box till the penalty expired. And, if I was the referee, I was in charge of the over and under to see if the coach was actually going to get somebody in the box before the penalty expired, or how fast we were going to ding him for making an illegal substitution from the bench. Mm-hmm. So.
And I think really one of the other big ones that sticks out to me as far as these rule changes go, and I don't know if I've read this wrong or read this right, but I believe it's in the early part of like the preface of the book or the foreword or whatever, like the standard of rules initiative, where it talks about a body check has to be, when a body check is being delivered, the player who's delivering the check, the blade of their stick has to be below their knees.
At the knee or below, that's correct.
Okay.
Otherwise, a minor for roughing under 641D.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, look, we had a lot of discussion about body checking, and this is one of those rule changes, guys, that really gets expanded throughout USA Hockey. All right, and we debated for a better part of 2 years. Hockey Canada in Quebec requires stick on puck to deliver a body check. We didn't want to go there.
Okay.
But the overriding concern has been, of course, you guys have heard it. Purpose of a body check is to separate a player from the puck, not his head. Mm-hmm. We wanted to get the blow-up hits and the unnecessary contact out of the game. Players are leaving the game because of some of that, and concussions are a big deal right now, and they will be. Health and safety of our players and our officials are important. So the idea about the stick blade being at the knee or below is that you're making a play for the puck. You don't necessarily have to gain possession or control, but you have to be making a play to win possession. And the idea is, if you're making a play to win possession, well, the stick blade needs to be somewhere in the vicinity of the puck. If it's not, if you're coming in with your arms extended and everything's up and high, then that body check is not doing anything other than punish or intimidate the opponent. So that's where that came from. And it mitigated itself into discussing safety. The medical people were involved in it. Mm-hmm. The youth council, the coaches were in favor of it. The coaches have sat in through all of this. One of the questions you asked me before is how do the referees feel about rule changes? We talked about stick on puck. And part of what we talk about is, can we teach it and can we enforce it? Because if we can't teach it then the rule change is meaningless. And if we can't enforce it, it's doubly meaningless.
Makes
So
sense.
stick on puck was really a tough deal,
Yeah.
especially with our younger officials, 15, 16, 17-year-olds. You know, if they were all like you and I and Brendan and around for a long time, much easier teaching, much easier deal. But that's not the case. We've got, you know, and before COVID, obviously, we have 26,000 referees, ages 11 to 75, all with different skill sets, understanding, comprehension, everything. That's like herding cats. So
Yep.
you got to be able to teach it, and you've got to be able to enforce it. And that's really the key issues for us as officials.
Okay. So they kind of came up with the stick below the knee as kind of that
Stick
middle.
blade. Yep.
That's what, yeah. Stick blade below the knee as kind of a middle ground. Obviously we want stick on puck ultimately, but
Right.
we can't necessarily teach it from a coaching side or enforce it from an officiating side.
Yeah, now I guarantee you're going to hear from parents in the early part of the season when some guy gets blasted in the wall. You know, that was a good check and not understand. But the coaches have been involved in this entire process, so they can't, and they won't feign ignorance about stick blade below the knee.
Makes sense. So, so, you know, talking about the coaches here, I have two things that pop into my head and things that I've always wanted to ask. One particularly, is there any possible way we could get the coaches when they certify to even take a 20 question, like level 1 level rules test? Is there any way we can get them to do that?
You know, my counterpart for the coaching section, Mike McMillan, and I have kind of beat that around, and Mike kind of rolls his eyeballs saying we got enough going on. And I understand that he does, and his coaches have enough too. I mean, I share with you a story. Wes McCauley and I had a conversation about that, and Wes said to me, he said, any coach that gets a game misconduct penalty should have to officiate 5 games before he gets back on the bench. And I
Love it.
I said to Wes, I said, I'm going to bring that to Mike McMillan and see how far that gets. But really, I mean, if you establish a good rapport with the coach, and that's part of what we put in the rule book, we want officials introducing themselves to coaches prior to the game, or at least having a conversation to initiate that rapport a little bit. We want you talking to them. If you do that, and the game becomes a little bit easier, just like talking to players and, you know, goaltenders and all the rest. So if you just reiterate that, just like we did when the line change procedure came out, you know, you went to the benches and you said, Coach, you understand the line change procedure? I need you to work with me here. I'm going to look to you. Same thing here, Coach. I want to remind you, you know, just like we do with equipment, everybody's got mouth guards, everybody's ear flaps are in place. Hey, you know that body check has to be delivered with the stick blade below the knee. I mean, it's just a good 5-second conversation.
It's that rapport thing where if you build it with them, they're just going to trust you that you know the rules.
Right.
Like, I mean, I definitely have that for myself, like for me, and I know Brendan probably does as well. I love, and by the way, I love doing these interviews because Brendan just sits here and he's like, I'm just along for the ride.
100%. No, but like if we're being honest, I mean, in Dallas, we've done the go to talk to coaches. Oh man, like probably like 5 or 6 years now at least. And it's one of those things where at the start of the season when we first started to do it, it was like, why are we doing this? This is dumb. Like you have an issue with the coach the year before, and you're like, do I really want to go talk to him? But it's one of those things where by the end of the season, you know the guy's name, you know what he wants. And it's one of those things where it's so much easier to go and diffuse a situation when you know exactly what he's going to need.
No, I've often said when I talk in front to parents and coaching groups, and I've spoken to here in Dallas and Houston to the coaches at their their seminars. And I'll walk in there and say, see, I left my pitchfork and horns in the car. You know, I'm a real human being. I just have a job to do, and let's talk about some things. And we go back and forth, and they'll bring up stuff from other games. And my standard answer is, I wasn't there, I didn't see it, I can't comment on it. I'm certainly not going to comment on something I didn't see firsthand, and certainly not going to throw another official under a bus. But that being said, I always tell them, I said, we don't talk much on the ice as officials, but you get us into this environment, you can't shut us up. I mean, we really want to talk to you. Every one of us much rather be talking somebody off the ledge than handing out penalties. I'm pretty convinced of that.
Oh, absolutely.
I always used to find out the goaltender's first name because I felt they were watching 50% of the game and saw the same nonsense I saw. And I made them 2 promises. I wouldn't let my linesmen drop the puck until I knew they were ready. And I'd cover for them, but they can't come out of the crease swinging their stick like Zorro. So if you do those 2 things, we're going to get along fine. You know what? That goes a lot further than just banging out penalties all the time.
And it's funny, like my second thing that I was going to ask, because I knew we're never going to get the coaches to take a rule test.
No.
But my other thing is, you've said you've walked into the coaches, into the meetings and stuff like that. What about requiring because they do an annual coaching seminar, kind of like we do, correct?
Right. Sure do.
So why doesn't USA Hockey say, hey, at these coaching seminars, we have to set aside an hour for one of the referees from the local affiliate to come in and talk about stuff?
I will tell you that at least in the Rocky Mountain District, okay, we do that. Okay. We have that relationship with our coach in chief, and we have that relationship at the local level. And I would tell you, whatever district you're in, your key supervisors should be reaching out to your coaching leaders and ask for that time.
Okay.
And I almost assuredly they will give it to you.
Yeah, and I don't doubt that they do. Like Chris Mariner's our state supervisor, Dewey's our district RIC, in the Southeast District, we're loaded. Like, yep. I have no complaints about our leadership in our district. I think all of them do an outstanding job. I feel like, as far as with dealing with the day-to-day stuff with coaches, or weekend to weekend, I should say, not necessarily day-to-day, but I feel like there's something more that we could ask from each other as far as between the coaches and the officials, to be able to either, hey, we're going to give you guys an hour at your seminar, right? And then maybe, I know, like some of the higher level stuff that I've done, we've actually had coaches come in and talk to us.
Right. And that was going to be my next comment. There are coaches that will tell you they want to come to your seminar and they want to be able to impart wisdom of what they're trying to accomplish to the referees.
And I just feel like maybe that's something at the, the big USA Hockey level, at the national level, they could, take a look at and think about incorporating. Let's get them closer together and maybe have a guy, or dedicate time at each side's seminars to a, like a local area coach or, referee, whatever, just to show most of these coaches, hey, we are human.
Well, so for the 7 years that I've been a district referee in chief, and I've been the section director for 4 now, I will tell you we're a lot closer today than where we were 7 or 8 years ago.
That's awesome.
I will also tell you that turning the ship at USA Hockey, and I'm not directed at any one particular group, is like trying to turn an aircraft carrier with a trolling motor. It takes time.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
And it's a big machine, and change is a painstaking, methodical process.
Obviously it is. Just having discussed the rule change process, let alone trying to to get the coaching side and the officiating side to share some time with each other.
Some of the key initiatives that we've been successful with is we involved coaches on our abuse panel, talking about abusive officials and how it was driving people out of the game, officials out of the game. And when we shared with them some of the examples of what was going on, both in video and not just in hockey, but in all sports. I mean, this is not just limited to hockey.
Yeah, it's definitely not just a hockey problem, because I've seen some crazy stuff.
The awareness level is significantly higher than where it is and where it was 7 or 8 years ago. So in good time, we'll get better.
Yep. I definitely agree, and it's definitely gotten better, at least in our area, just through working with coaches and like the different programs that our affiliates have done and all that kind of stuff. What was the other thing that I had about the coaches? I had those two. I think that was it on the coaching side.
So one of the things I tell referees when they complain about coaches and or players, I always ask them this question: what did you do on the ice? How did you deal with the situation? Did you yell, scream, use profanity back at him? What did you do? How did you handle it? And that's when I say treat disrespect with respect. You have the authority of the rule book. No reason to get mad at anybody. Penalties are part of the game. Apply the rule book and go about your business. Keep everything at a professional, low-key level. Keep your emotions in check. Don't do anything or say anything that can be quoted or recounted to anybody. You don't want to. If you don't want to be quoted, don't say it.
Yeah, because we all know how that went this past season.
Yes, that's right.
So, Brendan?
Yeah, two things I wanted to ask. The first one is going to the major penalties with an automatic game misconduct no matter what anymore. What is the theory behind that? Like, I know probably 95% of the time, if you're calling it a major, you're calling it a game misconduct. But like, I also feel like if a guy spears somebody in the nuts, it's like, it's not worth it's worse than a minor, but to me, it's not worth getting a guy kicked out of a game.
Well, spearing was always a 5 in a game.
If you're nuts, you probably want to.
Spearing was always a 5 in a game. I think we're more leaning towards like the high stick, the cross check. Trying to think what were the other two.
So when that
just
rule,
like a trip.
Well, when that rule came out, there are two impacts on that. First of all, the game misconduct was associated with an injury, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that came out of the rule change process is we no longer expect officials to be doctors.
Which is nice.
Right. So it's the vulnerable, defenseless, unsuspecting, follows the IIHF rule. Okay. The other side of that came from the youth council, really, that if somebody got a penalty that was worthy of a major, why do you want the guy in the game to begin with?
Yep. I don't disagree with that.
Right. And it gets back to safety.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's concerned about that. We want players staying in the game. And so if you slash somebody in a manner that's worthy of a major penalty, probably doesn't belong in the game anymore. If you high stick somebody, bring the stick up across the helmet, let's say, game any longer. So it gets back to, fouls will happen. And minor penalties are really what they say, minor penalties, things that happen during the course of the game. Major penalties have some level of intent.
Makes sense.
So again, to the players, I don't necessarily want to assess a major penalty. Don't do it.
Makes
If
sense.
you got any questions, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Um,
It was just one of those things, like, for me, when I saw that, I mean, obviously there was only four rules that didn't have the automatic game. So, like, I felt like with some of them, it was a little bit still, like, we still had a little bit of allowable, like, game management skills,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. Like,
Sure.
like if you high stick a guy and their stick comes up and you clip them in the chin, maybe they're bleeding a little bit, but it wasn't on purpose. You give them the major, you don't give them the game. Kind of like how it's a double minor in junior
Right.
and pro,
Mhm.
like stuff like that. I'm like, okay, yeah, it was an accident. You caught him, but I'm not going to kick you out of the game for it. So I felt like that kind of pulled it away, but at the same time, obviously, I understand the mentality behind it.
Boarding, charging,
Well, yeah, well, those are no questions
and they
asked.
were always there, right?
Yeah,
So
those are
some
no
of the other
questions
ones,
asked.
they just added to it.
And it does streamline it and make it easier. Hey, it's a 5, it's a game. Like, I don't even have to think about it.
Right.
The other thing that just popped into my head was, oh yeah, match penalties. So we changed the verbiage to reckless.
Mm-hmm.
What was the thought process behind that?
So if it, again, that gets reckless, vulnerable, unsuspecting, whatever I'm recalling words off the top of my
I
head.
feel like with the verbiage of reckless, it makes it even makes it easier now to call the match penalty.
Well, look, I've always said, when people say, what's a match penalty to you? And I said, when I see an act on the ice and I go, oh, holy shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Right? When you see a player make no attempt to make a hockey play at all,
Mm-hmm.
that's reckless.
Yep.
Yeah, I used to say, when I used to teach head contact when it first came out, I called it rest in peace, RIP, reckless, intentional, principal point of contact. Got you out of the game. I mean, if the stick was, if your hands or your stick was up there and it was just, you had no regard for your opponent, and it was intentional. You came from the other side of the ice surface as hard as you could, and you made initial contact with this, you were done. It's just, see ya. Have a nice afternoon somewhere else. But I'm not dealing with you anymore. And it gets back to the respect. And this is where I get called a dinosaur, right? Because when I was playing youth hockey, when I was much younger, we knew everybody we were playing against, and you had a certain level of respect for your opponent. A lot of that's missing from the game now.
Oh, it's so gone.
Right? These players are armored up. They're all wearing cages. They've got shoulder pads that make them look like Lawrence Taylor on steroids. The elbow pads you can open tuna cans with. They're virtually invincible,
Mm-hmm.
and they forget how vulnerable their opponents are. If you look at youth hockey, you've got 16-year-olds that are shaving twice a day, and other 16-year-olds that don't weigh 120 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah.
And that's the purpose of the game, is not to destroy a 120-pounder or have two 210-pounders square off at each other, seeing who's going to be the toughest guy on the block.
Makes sense.
Hockey. It's hockey.
I will say I absolutely love the fact that it got changed to reckless, though, because it makes it so much easier when explained to a coach, even if the kid's not hurt. It's like, but it wasn't a hockey play. Because I think a lot of coaches got hooked on like, oh, well, he's going to be out there next shift. And it's like, you know what? He probably is, but it's not a hockey play. And that's what we're calling the major for.
And we also dealt with the idea that even a player that came back who got his bell rung or whatever, right, came back in the game, played the rest of the game, and then we've got an email from the parents saying, that my son got drilled in this play, and we had to take him to the hospital post game, and he's got a concussion or he had a fracture or whatever it is. So he was hurt. How do we deal with that? And they always want that player who committed that foul then to do the Bat-10 death march, for injuring their son after the fact. And you're an official. I mean, you're 21 years old, 22 years old. You have no medical degree. You're making observation of the play and the condition of the player and trying to determine, is he injured? Is he not injured? Is he going to get up? Is he seeing little birds and butterflies? Does he know where he's at? And then, of course, you got the coach who wants to start player back in the game.
Yeah.
It removes all of that.
As far as, so again, this comes from the side of me that realizes why we do these rule changes, not the hardcore, like everything that they've done in this, really everything that we as an organization have done over the last, probably I'd say 8 years now, between the last two bigger rule changes. The player safety is obviously the focal point, and it's gotten better every year because we're getting rid of those hits in the youth level, and it's going away at the higher levels too. Granted, you still see them in pro hockey. It does happen. It is an emotional game. So there's a lot there that has been done to improve player safety. And I know, like for me, when I was growing up playing, we didn't, concussions were still like, we were getting them, but we didn't really understand them. And the kids now, like, they have it so much better as far as a player safety side goes than I had it, than you had it. Obviously with the equipment, but also
no question about it. I can tell you that when I was playing, you got hit and you didn't remember how the game got finished, and you came back and played the next day, right? As long as you stayed up and didn't get nauseous,
hey, you're good.
You're good. Rub some dirt on it, go on. Those days are over with. We're learning more and more about concussions and the lasting effects of them. And quite honestly, if you watch the upper levels of the game and point to the NHL, you don't see those players making those unnecessary hits.
Nope, not as much anymore. It's super rare.
They talk about how the game is changed at the NHL level. All those players now know each other. This isn't the old 16 league with 120 players making $7,000 a year trying to eke out a living. There's a lot of money on the table, and there's 20,000 fans in the stands, and it's got some entertainment value, and nobody is paying the kind of money for an NHL ticket to come watch minor league players play. They're looking to see their stars. They want to see Stamkos. They want to see Kucherov. They want to see the Hughes brothers. They want to see those guys play. That's what the game's about. And having them get injured recklessly doesn't put any money in anybody's pocket.
No, it doesn't. And the game has certainly grown because of all of these, the player safety stuff. Look at the TV deal that the NHL just signed. It's $650 million between TNT and ESPN now. So like, it's definitely growing. The player safety's there. The fans are enjoying it.
Look at when Wayne Gretzky was traded to Los Angeles.
I know.
For hockey throughout the U.S.
Yep.
Right.
So these rule changes definitely also come with a lot of pushback. So I think I want to close with this as far as like the rule change stuff goes. For you, what would you say to the other hat that I wear that's like, F this bullshit. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to referee youth hockey. I don't want to deal with this crap. What do you say to the guys that are out there that are just like, why? Like, go ahead.
Here's what I'll tell you. When I started officiating back, when we were still having clamp-on skates and those sorts of things.
Dinosaurs.
And, my first game, and I don't expect anybody to know this, was at Branch Brook Park in Newark, New Jersey, in a Bantam game. And it was my first game, and I was the referee. And the only thing I did right was got my car in the parking lot and got to the ice surface on time. And after that, it was a disaster. Okay. And back then, the basic rule book was you had the rule book, but the game was no autopsy, no penalty. So today, we have a much more uniform standard. And you'll go through you won't go through the seminar block, but Brendan will see some of it. The seminar decks are uniform nationally this year. For the first time in all the years I've been associated with USA Hockey, we have a national seminar deck for every level. Every seminar there's no more freelancing it. And to those officials who are going, oh my God, look at these changes. I don't know if I want to do this anymore, whatever. The game has evolved. It's not the hockey that you grew up with, that I grew up with in the 60s and 70s. And it's not the Broad Street Bullies and the Big Bad Bruins or the wild scoring of the 80s or the neutral zone trap of the 90s with the New Jersey Devils. I mean, it's none of that. The game is a much better game. You look at what you see on TV. Look at Tampa Bay Lightning. Look at Edmonton. Look at the skating we're seeing. Look at the skill we're seeing. And do we want to see that, or do we want to see bench line brawls and all that other stuff that we saw? That's all pretty boring stuff now. All the choreographed fights that we saw back in the early 2000s, where guys were making appointments prior to the game in the warm-up. We'll get on the ice. Nobody wants to see that. It's boring. The game's a much better game. And as officials, our job is to make sure that the game's officiated according to the rules. And I know that, like police officers, we're going to have some differences in what we think of a particular rule change. That's fine.
But we still got to go out there and do it.
Still got to do it. Go out there and do it. And I guarantee you, your love of the game is greater than any one rule change. That's why we do it. We're not doing. None of us are going to the National Hockey League. None of us are going to have a microphone taped to our belt where we get to announce penalties. That's a very select group of people. So if you're not going back to the 5 things I said, if you're not having fun, time to do something else.
I'm sorry, Ken. It wouldn't be a Team Stripes podcast without a dog interruption.
Well, my dachshund's bored. He's laying under the desk here. So
this is a recurring theme on the podcast,
part of the show,
where Shadow just wants attention.
Yep.
So this is our unprofessional moment of the podcast.
That's all right.
I will say though, obviously, I mean, Ross, unless you have anything else.
So I don't know if you remember this, Ken, but I came out and did a tournament for you, like 2008.
2008, 2009, maybe.
It would have been it was a AAA tournament, and the thing that I remember the most about it, and it's kind of a sad thing, I remember getting off the airplane, and the news about Heath Ledger had broke, and I was getting off the airplane in Dallas, and I was just like, oh man, like the Batman movie. And then I went and did the tournament, which was an absolute blast. God, we had I wish I could remember some of the guys that I worked that tournament with. Now that I'm drawing some.
God, I'd have to dig back. I mean, I've got to.
But you guys put me in a hotel. You got me a rental car, the whole bit. And honestly, it was one of the best tournaments that I've ever worked. And especially at that point in my career, like working that level of, I think it was U16 and U18 AAA, certainly helped me turn the corner, because the next year I was in the ODP.
Had to be, if it was 16 and 18 AAA, it had to be our weekend. We used to run a Martin Luther King weekend tournament.
I think that's what it was.
There were 2 tournaments that were running alongside. There was the Dallas Stars program that had a major tier 1, tier 2 event. And we'd have to bring in officials for that, because on top of that, we had our regular Martin Luther King weekend tournament. And in that weekend, we'd have about 600 games in Dallas.
Yep. Yeah, I worked at all the different Dr. Pepper centers.
Yep.
I remember doing Shattuck St. Mary. I remember there was a Russian team.
Yep. Usually a team from Mexico came up.
Okay.
There's also the Junior Kings.
I know the Sharks were there.
Russell Stover, Junior Sharks.
I do remember I do remember calling a butt end. It was Russell Stover and I want to say Honey Baked were playing each other. And I called a butt end as a linesman on a Russell Stover's player.
Yeah, probably had to deal with that.
So that's
Yeah.
that's all I had. I had to bring it up because it's like, man, that was a long time ago, and I haven't really talked to Ken since. So, but man, this was great. I greatly appreciate your time. I know we've been trying to line this up for a few weeks. I mean, heck, Brendan and I haven't even recorded in
I think like a month and a half
since like before the Stanley Cup Finals started. But we thank you for your time. Thank you for going over the rule change process and talking about some of them, and thank you for everything you do as far as like just being a member of USA Hockey in the position that you're in.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate the time, and I know it was a challenge to get all this organized in whatever with all these schedules and everything. I appreciate the time. I'd much rather be answering questions and talking to people like this than so we can be better on the ice and better for the game. Not doing it and sitting in our own worlds and ragging on social media doesn't help us. Doesn't help us as a group. The way we get better is learning from each other. So I invite anybody who's got questions. My email address and my phone number must be on every bathroom wall across the country. So I'm happy. I'm happy to answer questions and talk about it. And, look, we learned some stuff too. Nobody's perfect. Nobody makes every decision 100%. So if there's some input that somebody has an idea about, I'm glad to listen to it. That's why I got 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Fair enough. Well, on that note, we again thank you so much, Brendan. Anything?
No, I mean, again, thank you very much for coming on. Thanks for everything you do for, USA Hockey, Dallas Hockey, everything. I mean, I can sit here and go on and on about how you helped me just in my career. I mean, you helped me get to the ODP. Like, you were a big step along the way, supervised me at all these showcases. Like, it's just like, thank you. And I mean, obviously,
Well, I kind of wish I was
job.
still back on the ice, but I'm too old, too slow, and too fat now to do that. So.
Hey, you can come line. You can come line a game. I'll wear the bands. We can throw somebody else on there.
Yeah, well, that's somebody else needs to be able to cover for me.
That's fair.
Ken, you just reminded me of something I said to Cavs a while ago. I was texting about a game I was working. He goes, "Yeah, I know. I was watching." I was like, because he was watching one of the linesmen that was working. I was like, "So Ken, Cavs, how'd I do other than old, fat, and slow?"
There you go. I bet you he told you too.
Oh yeah, no, he said I did. I was whatever, but it was funny that you said old, fat, and slow. I had to laugh about that.
Yeah, one of my last games working, I had a coach. I was hanging out at the red line, and he leaned over the wall, and he asked me, he said, "You going into the zone anytime soon?" I said, "As soon as you guys start hitting the net, I might get down there. But as long as the puck keeps coming off the wall and coming back out here, there's no reason for me to go in there."
Perfect. I love it. I think that's a great one to end our segment on. And now we'll go ahead and go back to the main podcast. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the insight that Ken gave us on all things rule changes, everything that goes into it. It was awesome having him on. He's definitely been around a very long time. I worked a tournament for him back in 2008 out there in Dallas, which was an absolute blast. He's good people, and it was just a pleasure to have him on the podcast. So I guess really I want to talk about the Advanced Officiating Symposium. I was supposed to go in 2020. Obviously that didn't happen due to this little thing called COVID. So I did go this year. It was in Providence, Rhode Island, which worked out for me because my whole family's from there. So I stayed with my cousin, got to see a bunch of family members, had a car and a free place to stay. Took the boys out. We went up Federal Hill, which is the hardcore Italian area of Providence. it was cool when myself, Chris Mariner, who's been on the podcast, and one of our other Florida referees, Logan Berkowitz, who I'm going to have on at some point. We went to an Italian restaurant, and the girl was straight off the boat from Italy. It was awesome. She actually she had just gotten her citizenship, is what she was telling us.
Oh,
So that was really cool. But anywho, side story over. The symposium was awesome. If you are an official that is in a position to achieve tenured status, I could not recommend it more highly. The speakers were amazing. We had, let's see, to start off, we had Chris Rooney. Then we had Brian Murphy, Scott Zelkin, Don Adam was there, Paul Stewart, Jess Leclerc, Katie Guay. It was a who's who of USA Hockey officials. Matt Leaf, BJ Ringrose, Nick Zegliffa. We had the gentleman who was basically the founder, or was the founder, of the officiating education program, Mark Rudolph. He spoke. Ben Smith, who was the head coach of the 1998 women's Olympic team that won gold in Nagano, was there. It was, man, it was awesome. The presentations were all great. Getting to talk to people from all over the country was great. Got to run into some listeners, so that was cool. I can't recommend it more highly to people. And then the best part about it, when I got home a couple of days afterwards, they entered in the fact that I was a tenured official. I did the tenured official modules and my safe sport retraining. It took me less than a half hour to do that.
Sold.
And I did my open book test, which I missed 3 on without using the book, because I always take the open book test the first time without using the book. And I was done. I only had to do like 6 modules, safe sport, and an open book, and that's it.
I'm so glad I'm going next year.
Every year, that's all I have to do is a couple of modules, safe sport, and an open book, and I'm done.
I'm so glad I get to do this next year.
It's allegedly San Jose.
Oh,
that's what the rumor is. I don't know how true or not that is, but allegedly San Jose is the location they're eyeing. So I think with that, we need to discuss what are we doing with the podcast going forward.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we took, I think, about a month and a half, maybe 2 months off.
Yeah,
I really don't know.
You know what's funny is you know, my team got to the Stanley Cup Finals, and we didn't record. I want to say it's because Brendan was just upset that the Lightning went back to back.
If we're being honest, that probably didn't help. The simple fact that they did go back to back. I mean, good on them for going back to back.
Cup, boat parade, repeat.
Not next year, thankfully. That's all I know.
Oh, I don't know, man. It's so funny because I'm not expecting much, but Big Rig, Pat Maroon, came out and said, we can do it again.
I wouldn't put it past them. I really wouldn't. Like at this point, I wouldn't even be surprised. I'd be like, yeah, here we go.
Yep.
But no, so I mean, by the end of the season, I know personally for me, I was absolutely burnt out just hockey wise. I mean, I practically hated hockey, which is not a good thing.
Oh my God. Speaking of, it was so funny. They were going around the room at one point asking people why they do this. And I was in the car with my state supervisor. I go, Chris, if they would have asked me, my answer would have been, well, I hate hockey.
Yeah.
I'm only still a referee because of the people like you in this room. And he goes, that probably wasn't the answer they were looking for.
But it is damn true some days.
Oh, it's one of those things like I'll be 35 next month. I've been officiating this is my 20th season. And I've been playing since I was 6 years old.
So I've been around the game a long time, and there are days when I love this game more than anything else in the world. It's given me so many opportunities, but at the same time, there are days when I'm just like, why?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate to that. But so what we're probably going to do is just do the simple fact of we're a referee podcast and there's nothing to talk about referee wise.
Yeah.
We're going to wait till the season starts and then do episode 100, get everybody back on that, make that a big, huge to do because
Yeah.
it is.
So we're gonna have Logan and Brandon on. I'm gonna try to get another couple of guests, some previous interviewers. And that have been part of the podcast. So we'll definitely plan that going forward, and that's going to be huge. And maybe we'll come up with some kind of giveaway for our 100th episode.
I'm sure we will, and if we do, we'll definitely announce it. But yeah, I mean that's kind of our game plan right now. I know for me, like these past 2 months have been absolutely insane, just personally. I actually
You got
this
a new
thing-
job, right?
Yeah, I got this thing called a job, like an actual 9 to 5
A
job.
job.
Yeah,
Oof.
and I will say I'm loving it so far. Thankfully, I hate waking up early, but it's one of those things where I came to a point in my referee career that I don't want to call it the peak, but it might have been the peak due to a lot of reasons. I know when I first started doing this, at 18 and like going to work junior hockey, I said by the age of 24, if I haven't been full time or I don't have the really good shot at going full time, that like at that point it's time to move on.
Mhm.
24th birthday came in May, realized that I was like, oh well shit. Here's the issue. I mean, plain and simple, I was told time and time again by the higher ups in the ODP, whether that's, Mono, Morrison, Zelkin, Keith Caval, I mean, Chris Allman, when he was still around, like all of them said it time and time again to me that all I had to do was lose weight to go full-time ODP.
Mhm.
I never did that. I shot myself in the foot, never did that. I never went full-time.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things where it was definitely bittersweet for me. I'm still going to skate the ODP. I still want to skate. It's just one of those things where it's now no longer the primary focus,
Yeah.
which
Well,
was a very weird
we
adjustment.
we all come to that point in our career, like, and it's definitely one of those things. It is kind of tough. Like, I I know the feeling when the ship sails, but at the same time, though, all it does is just shift your direction.
100%.
Like that. When that dream goes away, it doesn't mean you stop chasing it. Like, you still go out there and ref, you be the best guy you can be on the ice. So you know what? So you don't go up the ladder one way, you go up a ladder the other way. You be the best guy in your area, you help mentor the young guys coming up, and just go out there and do service to the game at the level that you're working.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
100. I agree with you 100% on that.
and that's really the biggest thing, because like for me, I did 5 years in the Southern Pro League, and then just after my 5th season, like I didn't even get the email to come back the next year. But that was really based on where I was, me living in Tampa and all that. And then I think it was a year later, so I had a year break from working pro hockey. I got the email from the ECHL that, they wanted me to be part of the staff. So that was awesome. But yeah, it's very limited. Like, I work a few games a year when Steven and Joe need me to. And I do those games to the best of my ability, but I also know that I do have responsibilities here as an official, whether it be with training and mentoring the young guys. Just because I'm not working, or we're not working that highest level that we wanted to get to, doesn't mean the games we're working, whether it's, ACHA, CHF, USPHL, NA, NA3, whatever leagues that we're still working, doesn't mean that we still don't want to go out there and be the best guy at that level. And that's what keeps me coming back
is I always push myself to be the best guy at that level, because that's what I want to be. And I hold myself to a certain standard as an official. And I think if you do the same, it's not the end of the road. It's just, hey, be the best guy you can be at the level you're working and enjoy it. Have fun.
Yeah, it's funny that the more I thought about it and like talked about it with just people, like my inner circle, it was one of those things where I still very much want to get into a professional hockey game. I don't care if it's the Coast League, the Southern Professional Hockey. I don't care. I just want to say I skated pro hockey at this point. And it's one of those things where it's like that's still very much doable.
It is. And here's the thing. You're still young. You're 24. Okay. So, and this is to anybody. And this isn't just you. This is my best advice. We all know what it takes now to get to the higher levels as far as fitness, skating ability, game management ability. Like at this point, it's no secret what it takes. And if you're missing any one of those things, that's what you have to work towards. And if it's like, for me personally, I got on the scale about a month and a half ago, and I'd been put on, I was on Zoloft for about 9 months for my depression. I have since switched meds. Oh, hold on here. My video knocked out. So I've since switched meds, but the Zoloft put 30 pounds on me. I got on the scale and I was the heaviest I've ever been. And I was like, whoa, this has got to change. I'm down about 10 pounds already. Because I've been going to the gym every single day, like as often as I can. I did take a week off because I got stuck in Rhode Island, by the way. I was supposed to be home on Monday. I get to the airport and they're like, oh, and Frontier's like, you're here till Wednesday. Congrats. So I had to call my cousin and be like, yo, come get me. I'm here another 2 days. But control what you can control. So, I mean, obviously that, the weight thing for you is what they told you.
Yep.
You know what? If you take small steps now, a little bit at a time over the next year or two, it adds up. Like, so let's say you start some kind of a fitness journey is what I guess they call it. And get yourself in shape, and who knows what doors could open for you. This isn't the end of the road for you. Just like for me, I'm still working. Like I said, I'm gonna be 35, and for the Tampa area, I pretty much work the best hockey we got every single weekend. And when I got on the scale, I was like, yo, you have a standard that you hold yourself to with your officiating. And if you can't maintain that, you got a problem. So that's when I was like, shit, I have to make changes. And that's what I've done. So, and that's for everybody, like figure out what your deficiency is and fix it a little bit at a time.
100%. I agree with all of that. I will say though, the one nice part about no longer, pursuing this full time is the shittiest side of this job is the business side of it, where you're not at the next level for whatever reason it could be. It could be because your feet are too big, like the business side of this industry sucks. Plain and simple, it sucks. And for the longest time for me, it was business, drove all the fun out of it.
Yeah.
And that's not on anybody's fault. That's the simple truth.
And that's the mental thing too. Like you're getting in your own head about it. Now, guess what? You don't have that monkey on your back.
Dude, it's so nice now. I just go out and referee. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like
I'll tell you, my second full-time season in the Southern Pro League, I went through a stretch where I was in my head so bad about every little, like I was evaluating myself during the game.
Yep.
And I was brutal. I went through a stretch where I was brutal.
I had that stretch this year
because I was in my own head. But then when you get out of your own head about stuff, things change, and then you go out there and have fun. Like when the ship sailed for me, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to make it to whatever level. Now I'm going out and having fun, and it rubbed off on the players. And then I ended up being one of the more liked guys on the ice.
Yep. It's definitely one of those things where looking at it now, I'm like, holy shit, I can just go ref stress free.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, yes, there are consequences if I mess up, but like I'm not trying to go full-time ODP. So if I screw up a game in the ODP, it's like, yeah, I might not get another one, but it's like, well, fuck, I had a great fucking ride.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to screw up because you're a good linesman. So
Exactly. Yeah.
let's just put a squash on that. Cavs, he's not going to screw up. He's a good linesman.
I do agree.
What you just need to do, go out there, work the game, have fun, focus on the little things that you can do. And, maybe the door temporarily closed, but
Who knows?
start going to the damn gym
For
and
real,
work on
though.
that. Cause that's one of those things that you can control.
Yep.
And I think all of our listeners, the things that you can control are your fitness, your skating ability, your knowledge of the rule book, your application of the rule book, your rapport with players, all that stuff, all the things that you can strive to get better at. And it doesn't matter if you're, 18, 21, 24 in Brendan's case, or 35 or older than me. Like, work on those things all the time as an official and just try to be the best version of yourself on the ice.
100%. And I think this would be a great spot to leave the episode 99 off on.
Yes.
We will be back. If we do drop something before, it would be mid-September. Probably if we are looking at
I'm planning on doing some rules stuff.
Yes.
That we're going to try to do on the YouTube. So keep an eye out for that.
We will post everything on social medias as well. If we do have another episode drop before mid-September, you guys will be the first ones to know. But until then, I guess see you guys in the new season.
Yeah, for sure. Labor Day is when we get rolling. So
I am so excited.
Yeah, I am too. It's going to be fun. And to all our listeners, thanks for bearing with us while we have these long breaks. But we'll be back in full force here shortly. So until then, skate hard, have fun, and enjoy the game.